My name is Lena Torres. I'm 28 years old, and if you asked anyone to describe me, they'd probably say steady. I've always been the reliable one, the friend who shows up early, the coworker who fixes the printer without being asked, the daughter who pays her bills on time and never forgets birthdays. I work IT support at a mid-sized company in the city. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and for someone like me, stability has always felt like safety. What I didn't realize back then was that my craving for stability would blind me to how much I was sacrificing for someone who didn't value it or me. I met Daniel 2 years ago through mutual friends. He was 25 at the time, full of restless energy, quick to laugh, always holding his phone like it was an extension of his hand. Daniel wasn't just living in the digital age. He was building a career out of it. He wanted to be a full-time influencer. Back then, he had maybe 50,000 followers on TikTok posting comedy skits and lifestyle clips. When he introduced himself, he grinned and said, "I'm going to be famous one day. You'll see." I should have heard the warning in his words, but all I saw was his ambition, the light in his eyes. It was intoxicating. I fell hard. From the start, our relationship tilted in his favor. Daniel was charming, yes, but also broke, bouncing between part-time jobs, scraping together enough to cover half the rent while he invested in content. I told myself I didn't mind. I made more money, and I believed in him. So I covered the gaps, the rent. He couldn't pay the groceries. He couldn't afford even the expensive camera and ring light he needed to take his videos to the next level. I paid for it all out of my savings. At night, after long shifts staring at code and troubleshooting servers, I would sit beside him on our worn-out couch, editing his videos while he scrolled endlessly for inspiration. I'd suggest captions, trim clips, adjust audio. Sometimes I even stayed up past midnight, my eyes stinging, just so he could post something by his self-imposed deadline. When my company offered me a promotion that required relocating, Daniel looked at me with panic in his eyes. "I can't move right now, Lena. My network's here. My growth is here." So I turned the offer down. I told myself it was love, that love means compromise, and when he pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You're my rock, Lena. I don't know what I'd do without you." I believed him. I believed we were building something together. But over time, the balance shifted. Daniel's account grew steadily. He crossed 100,000 followers, then 200,000. Suddenly, he was being invited to influencer events, rubbing shoulders with other creators who looked like they stepped out of magazines. That's when the comparisons started. He'd scroll through his feed, showing me videos of shirtless men with sculpted abs, flashing their luxury watches and perfect smiles. "Look at how he engages his audience," Daniel would say. "That's the kind of energy people love." It sounded like business talk, but it stung, because what he really meant was, "Why can't you be like them?" I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't hurt, telling myself it was just his work brain talking. But inside I felt smaller each time. I wasn't glamorous. I wasn't flashy. I was just me. And maybe, just maybe, me wasn't enough anymore. The late nights started after that. At first, Daniel claimed it was all networking. He'd come home past midnight, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't his eyes glassy from champagne. When I asked how it went, he'd say, "It's just business, babe. You wouldn't understand. It's all about engagement." But his posts started changing too. They were flirtier, more suggestive. Videos with captions like, "Who wants to wake up to this?" His followers loved it. Strangers flooded his comments with heart emojis and fire symbols. I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything, that he still came home to me. But then I caught him DMing a bigger influencer, a girl named Maya with triple his following. The messages weren't explicit, but the late-night timestamps and the trail of red hearts told me everything I needed to know. When I confronted him, he smirked, brushing it off. "She's just a collab partner. Don't be so insecure, Lena. This is the job." The words lodged in my chest like splinters. Insecure, sensitive, overthinking. I began to wonder if that was all I was in his eyes, a safe harbor while he chased storms elsewhere. And yet I stayed. Because love isn't rational, and because every once in a while he'd still look at me like he used to, like I was the one person who believed in him when no one else did. But late at night, lying awake while he typed furiously on his phone, I started asking myself questions I'd never dared to voice. What if all my sacrifices weren't building a future but feeding a machine that would eventually spit me out? What if Daniel didn't really need me at all except as the quiet background character in his highlight reel? The thought chilled me, but I pushed it down, convincing myself tomorrow would be better. It wasn't. One evening, while Daniel scrolled through his comments, laughing at some joke his followers had made, I caught a glimpse of his screen. The caption on one of his draft videos read, "Imagine waking up to this every day." The clip hadn't posted yet. It was of me sleeping. My stomach nodded, but I didn't say anything. I told myself it was harmless. Just a silly draft. Maybe he'd delete it. I couldn't have known that draft was the crack in the dam. The water hadn't rushed through yet, but it was coming. And when it did, it would drown everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the cost of sacrifice. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I woke up to my phone buzzing uncontrollably, like it was trying to escape my nightstand. At first I thought it was some system outage at work, a server going haywire, but when I reached for it, the notifications weren't from the office. They were from friends, from coworkers, from numbers I hadn't seen in years. "Lena, are you okay, girl? I'm so sorry you had to see that. Is this real?" He really did that. My chest tightened as I fumbled to open TikTok. I barely used the app, only followed Daniel to keep up with his content. But the moment I logged in, the truth stared me in the face. There it was, a video he'd posted the night before, already at 500,000 views. It was me, asleep on the couch, my hair wild, my mouth slightly open in the kind of way no one wants, immortalized on the internet. He'd added goofy filters, a cartoon drool effect sliding down my chin, clown music echoing in the background. The caption read, "Imagine waking up to this every day. # relationship goals. # real life. # girlfriend fails." The comments were merciless. "Bro, how do you sleep next to that and not run? She looks like a tired mom of 4. Upgrade time king. Girls giving NPC energy while he's main character." I felt my stomach drop like I'd been shoved off a cliff. My face burned, not from shame alone, but from betrayal. This wasn't a private joke. This wasn't something shared between lovers. He had turned me into content. I sat frozen on the couch, phone trembling in my hands. Memories of the past 2 years flashed in fragments, me staying up late, editing his videos, me covering his rent, me shelving my promotion for his dreams. All of it, and this was the thanks I got reduced to a punchline for strangers to laugh at. The unfairness clawed at my throat until I thought I might choke on it. When the door opened around noon, Daniel breezed in like he had won the lottery. His phone was in his hand, his grin wide. "Babe, the video's blowing up. We hit 1.2 million this morning. Can you believe it?" I looked at him, disbelief written all over my face. My voice came out low, almost foreign to me. "Daniel, that's me, sleeping. You posted that without asking. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" He blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Lena, don't be so dramatic. It's funny. My followers love the realness. This is the kind of stuff that goes viral." I set my phone on the coffee table carefully, as if it were glass about to shatter. "Funny to you, maybe. But people are mocking me in the comments. They're calling me a loser, saying you should upgrade. Do you understand what you've done?" He rolled his eyes, the grin fading into irritation. "You're being way too sensitive. This is my career. You knew what you were signing up for when we started dating. Engagement is everything." That word engagement hit me like a slap. Not love, not respect, not partnership. Engagement. I felt my chest tighten as the truth settled in. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was material. "What about respect?" I asked softly. "What about us? Doesn't that matter more than likes?" Daniel snorted, tossing his phone onto the couch. "You just don't get it. Jake thought it was genius. He said this kind of content gets collabs." My head snapped up. "Jake." He hesitated for half a second too long, then shrugged. "Yeah, we've been talking. He gets it. He understands the grind, unlike you." There it was, the confirmation of every late-night suspicion, every red heart in his DMs. My ears rang, my heart raced, but I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just sat there staring at him as the weight of 2 years pressed down on my shoulders. Daniel kept talking, his voice rising, hands gesturing like he was pitching a brand deal instead of justifying betrayal. "You're safe, Lena. Predictable. But I need someone who matches my energy. You. You drag it down. I need excitement, not routine." Each word was a nail sealing the coffin of what we once had. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears that threatened to betray me in front of him. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in, his words echoing louder than they should. Safe, predictable, dragging him down. That was what I was to him now. Flashbacks rushed in uninvited. Daniel clinging to me in the early days, whispering, "You're my rock." His hand on mine when I bought him his first real camera, promising we were in this together. The nights I fell asleep, waiting for him to come home, telling myself it was worth it. And now this me reduced to a punchline while he confessed another woman matched his energy. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to keep my voice steady even as my insides twisted. Daniel, I said each word deliberate. You just told the whole world I'm nothing but a joke, and now you're telling me I'm holding you back. Do you hear yourself? But he only smirked, leaning back, like he was already the star of some new storyline. You'll never understand this world, Lena. Maybe you're just not cut out for it. His words were meant to break me, but instead something inside me snapped into place. Not broken, clarified. I realized then that I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to keep being his editor, his sponsor, his safety net, his punchline. He thought he had the power because his video was going viral, but what he didn't understand was that every view, every cruel comment wasn't just exposing me. It was exposing him. I stood the air heavy with silence. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to yell, to cry, to beg him not to leave for Maya, but I didn't give him that satisfaction. I'm not cut out for your world, I said quietly, and thank God for that. Then I turned and walked into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. He didn't know it, but that was the first step toward the end. Because betrayal like his doesn't fade, it calcifies. And once it hardens, love has nowhere left to live. That night I didn't sleep. Daniel snored beside me, oblivious, his phone still glowing faintly on the nightstand with unread comments flooding in. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the old air conditioner. The anger had burned itself out hours earlier, leaving behind something colder, a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I replayed his words again and again. Safe. Predictable, holding him back. The man who once told me I was his rock had turned my loyalty into a punchline, my sacrifices into dead weight. And for the first time I wondered, had I mistaken his dependency for love? At dawn, I slipped out of bed quietly. The apartment was silent, except for the occasional buzz of his phone. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter, letting the weight of my decisions settle over me. I wasn't going to fight for him. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. Because if he could humiliate me for likes, compare me to strangers online, and talk about another woman as if she were an upgrade, then the version of Daniel I fell for no longer existed. He had already left me in every way that mattered. All that was left for me to do was make it official. I opened the closet and pulled out my old suitcase. The wheels squeaked as I dragged it across the hardwood floor. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The faint scrape of the zipper, the soft thump of folded clothes hitting the bottom of the bag. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if I had all the time in the world. Because this wasn't running away. This was reclaiming my dignity. I packed only what was mine. Clothes, my laptop, a box of keepsakes my grandmother had given me. I left behind the ring light, the tripods, the camera I'd bought with my savings. Those belonged to Daniel now. They could keep him company when the followers stopped cheering. Each item I placed in my bag felt like proof that I still existed outside of him. That Lena Torres wasn't just the background character in someone else's viral story. As I zipped the suitcase shut, I noticed my reflection in the bedroom mirror. My eyes were swollen from a night without sleep, but beneath the fatigue, I saw something sharper, stronger. Resolve. For months, I'd been gaslit into believing I was too sensitive, too insecure, too ordinary. But the woman staring back at me looked anything but weak. She looked done. Before leaving, I sat at the small desk in the corner of the room. I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote just 2 sentences. I deserve better than being your punchline. Goodbye. I placed the note on his pillow, right where he'd see it the moment he woke up. There would be no screaming match, no tearful confrontation, no last-minute pleas, just silence and finality. Because the loudest statement I could make wasn't with words, it was with absence. When Daniel stirred in the bathroom humming some mindless tune as the shower ran, I rolled my suitcase to the door. My heart pounded, but my face remained calm. I took one last look at the apartment, the clutter of ring lights, the empty energy drink cans, the faint scent of cologne and ambition. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage set, one I'd been forced to play a supporting role on. I placed my hand on the doorknob, inhaled deeply, and walked out without a sound. The city air hit me like a baptism. Cool, sharp, almost cleansing. I pulled my suitcase behind me, the wheels clattering on the uneven pavement. With every step, the weight on my chest loosened, even if just slightly. I didn't know exactly where I was going. A friend had offered me her couch if I ever needed it, and right now, that was enough. What mattered most was that I was moving forward, out of his apartment, out of his shadow, out of the prison of waiting for someone who never valued me. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a message. Daniel, where are you? What's with the bags? This is insane. Over a video. Seriously. I didn't reply. Another message followed. Daniel, you're being dramatic. I didn't cheat. Jake and I are just friends. You're twisting things. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. No anger, no longing. Just confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Because even in my absence, he was still minimizing, still deflecting, still making me the problem. By evening, the tone of his text shifted. Daniel, you'll regret this. No one else is going to put up with your boring routine like I did. You're lucky I stayed as long as I did. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. He really believed he was the prize. I blocked his number, slid my phone into my pocket, and looked out at the glowing skyline. For the first time in months, maybe years, the silence felt like peace instead of punishment. That night, lying on a friend's couch, I allowed myself to grieve not for him, but for the version of myself I'd lost in the relationship. The woman who thought love meant sacrifice, who believed stability meant silence, who confused loyalty with invisibility. I whispered to the dark room more to myself than anyone else, never again. Because betrayal has a way of reshaping you. It burns, it scars, but it also forges something new in its wake. And I could feel it already, the beginning of someone stronger, sharper, unwilling to settle for being anyone's content ever again. Daniel thought the story ended with his viral video, but he was wrong. That was only the beginning of my story. The first few weeks after I left were brutal. I had escaped the apartment, but I couldn't escape the humiliation overnight. My face, the one Daniel had mocked with drool filters and clown music, had already been etched into the internet. Even at work, I caught glimpses of coworkers' pitying glances. They never said anything outright, but the way conversations fell silent when I walked into the break room said enough. At night, on my friend Marisol's couch, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replaying his words, safe, predictable, dragging him down. The unfairness of it twisted in my gut. I had given up so much, my savings, my career advancement, my time, and he had discarded me for likes. But slowly the silence began to heal me. I found a small studio apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't much, just one room with peeling paint and a kitchen sink that dripped no matter how tightly you turned the knob. But it was mine. No ring lights cluttering the space. No echoes of Daniel's voice rehearsing punchlines. Just quiet. Work became my anchor. With no late nights spent editing Daniel's videos, I had time to pour myself into projects. I took on extra assignments, polished my presentations, stayed late because I wanted to, not because I was waiting for someone to come home from a networking event. And in a twist of irony, the same week Daniel's video hit 5 million views, my boss called me into his office. "Lena," he said, tapping a folder on his desk, "you've really stepped up these past few months. We'd like to offer you a raise and more flexibility to work remotely." I smiled, not because of the money, though, that helped, but because it felt like the universe was whispering, "See, you were holding yourself back too." I built small rituals that became lifelines. Morning gym sessions where I blasted podcasts about self-growth instead of Daniel's endless playlist of trending TikTok sounds. Long hikes on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do, but Daniel had once dismissed as boring nature stuff. I remembered the last time I'd tried to plan a hike with him. He bailed last minute for a spontaneous collab with Maya. I went alone that day, feeling the sting of being second choice. Now, hiking alone didn't feel like rejection. It felt like freedom. Meanwhile, karma had begun to creep into Daniel's world. I didn't go looking for updates. I had blocked him everywhere. But the internet has a way of delivering news whether you want it or not. Friends sent me screenshots. My phone buzzed with whispers. At first, his video brought him exactly what he wanted: attention. Brands reached out. His follower count climbed. But then the tide shifted. People began pointing out the cruelty. Why humiliate your girlfriend for clout? This is just bullying dressed up as content. Unfollow. Toxic energy. The hashtags started small. Hashtag respect your partner. Chad, toxic boyfriend. But within weeks, they spread like wildfire. Sponsors backed out, unwilling to associate with someone branded abusive. His follower growth stalled, then plummeted. The same strangers who had once cheered him on were now dragging him mercilessly. And then came the twist I hadn't expected. Daniel went public with Maya. Not in a flashy announcement, but in a series of subtle posts, a hand in his stories that wasn't his, a shadowy second figure in his videos. Soon, everyone pieced it together. But from what I heard, the romance wasn't the fantasy he thought it would be. Maya wasn't a muse, she was a mirror. She played the same game he did, using people for clout, discarding them when they no longer served her brand. At first, they were a golden couple collaborating on videos that drew in millions of views. But the cracks showed quickly. Daniel began appearing more controlling on camera, cutting Maya off mid-sentence, criticizing her ideas. And one night, during a live stream glitch, viewers heard it, his raised voice, sharp and cruel. "You're nothing without me," he snapped, unaware the mic was still hot. Clips of the outburst spread within hours. Daniel's carefully constructed image of funny, relatable boyfriend crumbled. Now he was the villain, his face attached to threads titled, "The Downfall of a Toxic Influencer." I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. But when I read those headlines, something inside me loosened. It wasn't schadenfreude exactly, it was justice. The world finally saw what I had lived through. Months passed. I rebuilt piece by piece. Therapy sessions helped me unpack the manipulation the way Daniel had chipped away at my confidence. "You're not the punchline," my therapist told me once. "You never were." Those words stayed with me. One afternoon at a work conference, I met Ethan. He was in marketing, soft-spoken, steady, with a dry humor that caught me off guard. We struck up a conversation over burnt coffee and stale bagels, and before I knew it, we were talking like old friends. When I told him about my weekend hikes, he grinned. Finally, someone else who likes trees more than ring lights. It was simple, effortless. No flashy captions, no comparisons, just connection. A few weeks later, he said something that nearly broke me, not because it hurt, but because it healed. "You're steady in the best way, Lena." The words Daniel once weaponized against me, Ethan turned into a gift. And still Daniel's spiral continued. Mutual friends whispered that Maya had ditched him after his outburst went viral. Sponsors had dried up completely. He was posting desperate Q&As, begging followers for engagement, but the numbers kept dropping. His once polished image cracked further with each video, his hair unkempt, his jokes falling flat. I watched from a distance, not with glee, but with detachment. Because karma was already doing the work. One evening, hiking boots muddy and phone buzzing with Ethan's goodnight text, I realized something profound. For so long I had thought Daniel's betrayal defined me. That video, those comments, his cruel words. But watching him unravel while I quietly rebuilt, I finally saw the truth. The betrayal didn't define me. My response did. And I chose to rise. It started with a text. 2 months had passed since I left and I hadn't heard from Daniel. I'd blocked him, muted him, erased him from my feeds. But one night, just past midnight, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Daniel, hey Lena, I miss you. That video was dumb. I deleted it. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, heart. Steady fingers unmoving. A year ago, those words would have gutted me. Now they felt empty, like echoes bouncing off walls I no longer lived inside. I didn't reply. The next day, another message. This time a voicemail. His voice was softer, cracked around the edges. "Babe, things with Maya fell apart. She was awful. Not like you. I see now how good we had it. Call me, please." I let the message play in silence, then hit delete. The trickle became a flood. Texts stacked one after another, his tone swinging wildly between remorse and desperation. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I was chasing the wrong things. You were always there for me. Daniel. Please, I need help. Rent's due. Sponsors bailed. You know how hard this is. Daniel, don't punish me forever. We had something real. I know you feel it too." Each message confirmed what I already knew. He didn't want me. He wanted the stability I had always given him, the safety net he'd scorned until it vanished. Then came the pressure from his family. First, a group text from his sister. "Sister Lena, you're being cruel. Daniel made a mistake, but he's suffering. Talk to him. He deserves another chance." Then a call from his mother, her voice stern, almost commanding. "Family sticks together, Lena. He's learned his lesson. That video was just a joke. You're overreacting. Come back, fix this. He needs you." I closed my eyes, biting back the bitter laugh clawing its way up my throat. Family sticks together. Where was that wisdom when Daniel humiliated me in front of millions? "Mrs. Alvarez," I said evenly with respect. Daniel chose his path. He dismissed me, mocked me publicly. I'm not responsible for his consequences. Her voice turned cold. "You're selfish. He made you part of his world, and you abandon him the moment things get hard." For once, I didn't flinch. "No," I said quietly. "I left the moment he made me a joke." And I hung up. The final straw came one rainy evening. I was home from work, curled up on the couch with a book, when a knock rattled my door. I froze. Few people knew my new address. When I peered through the peephole, my stomach clenched. Daniel. He stood there, hair damp from the drizzle clothes, wrinkled eyes hollowed out. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the bright, ambitious influencer had been stripped away, leaving only a boy who didn't know how to exist without applause. I opened the door just enough to block his way. "What do you want, Daniel?" His voice cracked, his hands fidgeting. "I messed up, Lena. I know I did. Maya, she used me, took my money, and left. My followers hate me. The comments are brutal. But you," he swallowed hard, "you were safe, reliable." I realize now I threw that away. His words might have once felt like balm. Now they landed like insults wrapped in apologies. Safe, reliable, the same things he had mocked me for before. "That's on you," I said flatly. "You chose excitement over respect. You called me a distraction, remember." He stepped closer, his voice rising, desperation twisting into anger. "I was wrong. I see it now. Influencer life is fake. You're the only real thing I ever had. Please, Lena, take me back. I'll change. No more videos about us. No more jokes." For a moment, pity tugged at me. His face was drawn, his shoulders slumped, his bravado gone. But then I remembered the sting of humiliation, the way he laughed as millions mocked me. I shook my head. "I don't believe you. And even if I did, it wouldn't matter. Some things can't be undone." His expression hardened, his tone shifted sharp with the cruelty I knew too well. "How dare you ignore me like this? After everything I did for us, you're acting like a child." Something in me snapped, not with rage, but with clarity. "Everything you did," I asked, voice calm but cutting. "Daniel, you humiliated me for likes. You compared me to strangers. You cheated me out of respect. Don't rewrite history to make yourself the victim." His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just silence, heavy and bitter. I stepped back, hand on the door. "Goodbye, Daniel." And I shut it firmly. He banged once hard, his voice muffled through the door. "You'll regret this. Lena, don't think you're better than me." But his words had no power anymore. I leaned against the door, exhaling slowly, my heart steady. For the first time, I realized the power had shifted. He no longer had the ability to define me, diminish me, or drag me down. The attempts didn't stop there. A week later, his sister sent another message, "Pathetic Lena. You're punishing him for growing his brand. You were never good enough anyway." Funny, I remembered almost the exact same words falling from Daniel's lips. I blocked her too. Then his mother left a voicemail voice dripping with disdain. "He'll find someone better. Don't come crawling back when you realize you've made a mistake." I didn't bother replying. Because what they couldn't understand was simple. I wasn't crawling anywhere. I was standing taller than I ever had before. That night, as I curled back onto my couch, rain pattering against the windows, I felt the weight of finality settle over me. Daniel was unraveling, desperate to drag me back into his chaos. But I had chosen peace, and no amount of knocking, pleading, or pressure could pull me back into the storm. The invitation came from a mutual friend, Marisol, the one who'd let me crash on her couch when I first left Daniel. She was throwing a birthday party, and I hesitated at first. Mutual friends meant mutual risks. Daniel might show up. But then I thought about the months I'd spent hiding, shrinking myself to avoid him, and realized I was done living in fear of running into a ghost. This wasn't his circle anymore. It was mine. So I said yes. And this time I wouldn't be walking in alone. The night of the party, I arrived with Ethan by my side. He wasn't flashy, no designer sneakers, no ring lights in his trunk. Just a steady, kind presence that grounded me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. When Marisol hugged me at the door, whispering, "I'm so glad you came," I felt a quiet pride. Months ago, I had left Daniel's world in silence, suitcase dragging behind me. Tonight, I was stepping fully into my own. The room buzzed with laughter music and clinking glasses. People mingled in corners, catching up, sharing stories. I felt Ethan's hand find mine, a simple gesture, but it meant everything. For once, I wasn't bracing for humiliation. I was simply there. Of course, the peace didn't last. Halfway through the evening, the air shifted. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. And when I followed their gaze, I saw him. Daniel. He hadn't been invited of that, I was sure, but there he was, slipping in behind a group at the door, eyes scanning the crowd. He looked different. Smaller. His hair unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, like he'd pulled them from a pile on the floor. The glow he used to carry the false confidence of likes and brand deals was gone. He spotted me instantly, and like a moth to flame, he moved. "Lena," he said, voice low, urgent, when he reached me. "We need to talk. Privately." I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. "No," I said firmly. "Say it here or not at all." His eyes darted nervously around the room. People were watching. He hated that. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Please. I see now. You were the best thing I had. Maya destroyed me. I'm in therapy trying to rebuild. Let's start over. I promise no more online drama. Just us. The desperation in his tone might have once softened me, but not tonight. Tonight I wasn't the girl begging for scraps of respect. I was the woman who had walked away. Before I could answer, Ethan returned from the kitchen, 2 drinks in hand. He slid one toward me with a smile, his presence effortless, steady. Daniel's eyes widened, the realization hitting him like a blow. He looked between us, the man beside me, the calm in my smile, the ease in my posture. And I could see it written all over his face he had lost. I turned to Daniel, my voice steady, clear enough for anyone nearby to hear. Daniel, that chapter is closed. You mocked me for being safe and predictable. But Ethan, he sees it as strength. He values what you threw away. You don't get to rewrite the story now that your brand collapsed. His face flushed red. You think you're better than me now? With him? I didn't flinch. No, Daniel. I just know my worth now, and it has nothing to do with you. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of music in the background. People nearby exchanged glances, some whispered. Everyone could see it. The influencer who once turned me into a joke was now the one exposed, standing in tatters while I stood tall. Daniel muttered something under his breath. Anger, maybe shame, before storming toward the door. No grand exit, no applause. Just the sound of him slipping out, irrelevant and forgotten. Later, as the party carried on, Ethan leaned close. You okay? I smiled, truly smiled, in a way I hadn't in a long time. I'm more than okay. Because closure didn't come from revenge. It didn't come from watching him fall, though karma had taken care of that. Closure came from realizing I no longer needed his validation or his apologies. On the ride home, Ethan laced his fingers with mine. The city lights flickered past, and I thought about everything I'd endured. The betrayal, the humiliation, the silence, the rebuilding. For so long, I thought Daniel's video defined me, that the internet's laughter would follow me forever. But sitting there hand in hand with someone who valued me without conditions, I realized the truth. That viral video didn't end me. It freed me. When we reached my apartment, I leaned against the doorway for a moment, listening to the quiet. Months ago, silence had felt like punishment. Tonight, it felt like peace. I whispered to myself, not as a vow this time, but as a truth already lived. Never again.